Welcome to another Creative Podcast, where creative outcasts come together to share their stories so we can all feel a little less lonely. I'm your host, Janelle Marquez.
Hello. Welcome we're back to another episode of another Creative Podcast. Today, we are talking about rejection and why rejection is one of the best things that could happen to you as a creative or just as a regular person. I feel like rejection is something that we are constantly dealing with throughout our lives. And as much as I want to say it gets easier, I think there are varying levels to how we experience rejection, because depending on what you've gone through in your life, rejection could either be like something you throw over your shoulder or something that really just hinders your spirit. So I'm going to be giving varying perspectives on rejection and overall just why I think it's one of the best things that could ever happen to you. Whether you're just quickly tuning into this episode to see what it's about, or you're here for the whole entirety of me yapping, I do want to start off this episode with a quote that my husband constantly reminds me of. And that quote is, "It's better to try and receive a no than to never try at all and receive no answer," or something along the lines of that. I can't really remember exactly what it is because the theme remains the same. And I think anyone who's just trying to put themselves out there, creative or regular person, I just think that it can be so daunting to go out there and just try to do the damn thing, whether it's trying to meet new friends or applying for a grad school program. From my experience in the short life that I've lived so far, I'd say one of the biggest things that stands out to me when I think about my experience with rejection is I've allowed most of the rejection I've ever received to make me become a little bit more resilient in my fight to thrive. And an example of that is just, and I feel like a lot of creatives have maybe experienced this, I feel like a lot of the times when you are rejected from a job you wanted to get or a career that you are trying to enter into, a lot of the times our passion and the fire that we have for creating or doing whatever it is that we want to do, that passion and that drive is just so much stronger than somebody telling us no or that we are not the right fit for them or whatever it may be. If you're passionate about what you're trying to pursue, there is not going to be a rejection that's going to kick you to the ground and keep you there. In fact, I was actually watching the Call Her Alex docuseries on Hulu, and her and somebody else were like talking about how you just can't hear no. And I think I've really adopted that as a creative, that whenever someone rejects me, I don't really see it as no's and I don't hear no's. And while that may seem a little delusional, to be thinking like that, I think it helps you become resilient. I think that kind of thinking and that mindset allows you to continue to pursue and go after what you want, no matter how many doors you have to knock on, no matter how many conversations you have to have just to get you in front of the right people in the right room who see your vision the way you do. And to go with that thought as well, I think when it comes to being rejected, the more you experience it, the more you go through it, if you don't let it get you down, it will only allow you to strengthen your voice and amplify your passion for your art. As artists, I think it's really important to remember that whenever we're creating, it is so important, now more than ever, especially in today's day and age, that we are creating for ourselves first, that we are creating what we want to see exist in the world. We are creating things that are a true expression of how we feel, our viewpoints in the world, and stuff that you're going to be proud to have out there or proud for people to see, whether people accept it or approve it or like it even. So when you are so proud of what you are creating or making or whatever as an artist or creative, or even as a regular person, if you're just proud of the work that you do and you put out there, keep in mind, rejection won't mean anything. In fact, it's just going to strengthen that voice that you have. And I have found that in my experience as an artist, a lot of the times I view rejection as not a personal attack. I view it more as just we weren't a good fit, or my style is just not for them. And that's okay, because there is going to be someone else out there who will fit that person's style, and or maybe their personalities mesh better than mine do. And that's okay. I think as creatives, it is also important to remember that like you're not always going to be everyone's cup of tea. And that thought also goes alongside the other thought of there's enough room on the table for everyone to eat, because not every client is going to be a perfect fit for me. But I may come across someone who it didn't work out with us, but it may work out for a friend of mine or another colleague in another town, state. It's just so important to see these lighter sides of experiencing rejection, because they allow you to keep your spirits up. And as creatives, I feel like we experience rejection more than most people. So the better we could kind of feel about those decisions that aren't really in our hands, the better off we'll be, especially mentally. And kind of piggyback on that note, when I'm talking about not being a good fit for another client, or them just simply not liking my work, so not choosing me, I think it's really, really important as creatives to view rejection as redirection. Once I embraced that school of thought, it really made it easier for me to stop viewing closed doors as like an end point. I started saying, okay, you know what? I knocked on that door. They didn't answer. They didn't want to let me in. And that's totally fine, because there are so many more doors I have yet to knock on. And some doors I may not even have to knock on too hard. And those may just be the opportunities that are truly meant for me. Another thing about rejection, especially as you get older and you're kind of used to rejection, I have been practicing my craft for a little over 10 years. So I had been dealing with rejection at a very young age, as little as 13 years old. And I've received every bit of critique and criticism you could possibly receive. And one thing, and especially in the last few years, I've really learned to view any sort of rejection or criticism as redirection when it comes to my work. So it's made me a little more open-minded when it comes to why this project wasn't really well liked, or open to hearing feedback on things that I can improve going forward in other projects. I think that also just kind of comes with age though, because I think I'm my harshest critic, and sometimes I receive feedback from something that is not a final product, or an idea may have been rejected, but I will receive feedback on what was well received and what wasn't. And I think a lot of that stuff is so important, because this opportunity may have not worked out, this project may have not been picked up, this idea may have been rejected, but I can take what I learned from that rejection and use it to improve upon my next proposal. And as an artist, I think that's really valuable if you choose to view it that way. But at the end of the day, we're also human. So I think it's kind of normal to just not want to hear any of the negativity. But I do encourage you, if you could receive feedback on why you weren't chosen for something or why something didn't work out, I do encourage you, especially creatives out there, to listen and take what you want and grow from those opportunities. And speaking of opportunities, I slightly touched on this in the beginning of my last point, but when one door closes, that is allowing there to be room for another one to open. What a concept. No, but seriously, every single time you get rejected, it's just making room for what is meant to be. I think it is important to get rejection from things, because I have had times where I apply for a job or I apply for an opportunity and I submit my work, and then I get told I was not chosen or that I wasn't picked. And I'm not gonna lie, there's been those few times where I kind of get like a sigh of relief of like, oh, thank God I wasn't chosen, or thank goodness that this opportunity was not meant for me. And sometimes I get those feelings immediately. Sometimes I have those feelings later down the road when I realize like, oh, thank goodness I wasn't picked for that, because it probably wouldn't have worked out. But on the other hand, sometimes when you get rejected from something, you aren't picked for a project, that doesn't mean that's the end all be all, because sometimes you may have not been the right pick for this specific opportunity, but now you're in that person's head, you're on their radar. And so if there is an opportunity that they think would align perfectly for you and them, now you're in their brain. So if you left a strong enough impression on them, they will be thinking about you. And that may lead to opportunities that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't put yourself out there and tried to go after something that you thought would have worked out. So I think there's multiple perspectives on, why rejection is good for you, in the sense of it allowing you to have other opportunities, because that means there's more opportunities either internally or externally. And you really just wouldn't know unless you go out there and you try. And I think that's one of the most important parts about rejection, is that it is proof that you are trying. When you get rejected, it means that you gave it a try. It means you're taking a risk. It means you're creating. It means you're putting yourself out there. There are so many people who are out there who are just scared to put themselves in spaces that they really want to be in, but they're so fearful that they just don't. And there are so many more people who are like that than there are people who go out there and take the risk and put themselves out there. So you just showing up, you trying, you're already ahead of the game by quite a lot. So if you woke up today and you put yourself out there, give yourself a little pat on the back, because you're already beating the game by a whole lot. And I am so proud of you, because I know how hard it is to show up. I know how hard it is to put yourself out there. It's not easy. And especially if you're dealing with rejection, if you keep showing up and you keep getting rejected, more power to you. And I think for creatives, the biggest thing really is to continue showing up. And look, I'll be so honest, if you've been listening to my podcast, you know how hard it has been for me to continue to show up and be present and do the thing. I for a second thought I was gonna have to cancel my podcast because life was looking a little rough for a girl. But I am so proud of how far this podcast has come. I'm so proud of the work that I put into it, the community I am building, the response I receive when I put something out there. One of my videos popped off. I was so excited, but it was like my 6th episode, I think, and that would not have been possible if I would have stopped uploading after my 3rd episode. When you keep trying, when you keep showing up, people will recognize that, people will see it, and the proof will pay off in the end, because 13 episodes in, and I'm so excited to do this. I want to keep showing up no matter what. And trust me, I'm still struggling with how to show up, but I'm still doing it, because why? For every time that you show up, there's so many others who still haven't. So that's why we're here. I mean, it's not why we're here. There's more reasons why we're here. You guys know why we're here. And although I kind of just touched on the ripple effects of me showing up and how that continues to propel me and encourage me to want to show up on this podcast, I do want to leave you guys with this strong point, and it's my last point I'm going to make when it comes to this topic. If you're going to take anything from this episode, aside from what I said at the beginning, I do want all creatives to keep in mind that one of the greatest things you can take from the experience of being rejected is that over time, it will teach you to not have to rely on external validation when it comes to your art. I kind of made this point a little bit earlier, but I do really want to emphasize that for whatever reason it is, at the end of the day, when you're going through this process, you are learning to not attach your art to the approvals of others. And I know it's really hard to embrace that school of thought because of the world of social media that we live in, where likes and views and comments and engagements and all that good stuff is so important. And it's how a lot of people get paid. It's how a lot of people measure their success in their job, especially if you work in social media marketing. But to my fellow creatives, I hope you're hearing me when I say this, because you are allowed to create and enjoy what you create and be proud of what you create without needing the approval of anyone on the outside, because none of this really matters at the end of the day as long as you are proud. So allowing yourself to detach from outcomes when it comes to your art is just one of the best things you could do. And to tie up that opinion, I'm going to leave you guys with this quote. And the quote goes, "Creative freedom begins where attachment to approval ends." And I can't tell you guys how often that thought replays in my head when I think about the work I'm currently creating for myself. And I think there's going to be someone out there who probably needed to hear that. And if that resonates with you, I hope you can take those few words and stick them in the back of your mind and pull that out when you need a little pick-me-up, because this is a great mantra for creatives. And I think it's one I wish we embraced a little bit more. I don't know. I haven't really seen a lot of people bring that up. And I think if you're someone like me and you think a lot about a lot of things, you think very deeply about them, you're going to find some great quotes out there. And that could also be because it's just, I'm a bit of a bookworm. So like, I love reading some good quotes and finding them and hanging on to them quite closely, hanging on to them quite tight. Wait, what are words? I don't know. I think it's time I wrap this podcast up. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on, that's a little more than 2 cents. You guys get what I'm saying. This is just how I currently feel about rejection. I've always felt that rejection is literally one of the best things that could happen to you as a creative. I would not have the career I have right now if I did not receive all the rejection I have. I dealt with a whole month of rejection before I almost gave up on being a photographer in general. And I'm so happy I didn't give up on this, because I can't imagine having the life I do right now if I would have just accepted all the rejection I received. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are on rejection. Do you think it's the best thing that could happen to you as a creative or as a person in general? Like, what are we thinking? I'd love to hear it all. Leave it down below in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.